So let's kick off with this really stimulating roundtable, the disruptive technologies transforming the landscape in oncology. To moderate our panel and the discussion that's going to follow, tackling this topic and many more, it's a great pleasure to introduce our moderator, the Vice President of R&D Oncology at Servier, Patrick Therasse. The floor is yours.
Can you hear me? So welcome everybody, good afternoon I would say, and I'm so happy to be with my disruptive colleagues entertaining you for 1 hour this afternoon. I was told we have the longest session, so I will speak very little. And we also have someone who should be online. Hi Jean-Yves, are you okay?
Hello,
can you
Patrick.
Hear us?
Yeah,
Yes.
I can hear you. Can you see me? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can see you, I can hear you. So let
Hello,
me
everyone.
briefly introduce the session. I think you saw the title, Disruptive Technology Transforming the Oncology Landscape, and there is a lot to be told about these type of topics, certainly. And to do this with me, so we have Professor Jean-Yves Blay, who is online, medical oncologist in Lyon, Centre Léon Bérard, who is going to tell us a little bit about what are the unmet needs remaining in oncology, and God knows if there are quite a few. And then to illustrate some of those topics, we have three invited guests, starting with Anne-Laure Morel from Torskal, Pierre Leurent from Voluntis, and Eric Halioua from PDC Line Pharma. Different type of companies, different type of vision on how this may contribute to oncology. Very interesting to see it from different angles, and certainly very interesting to hear their what they can contribute and how they see their contribution to this challenge that we all face, trying to move the needle for oncology patients. So in the interest of time, I will hand over immediately to Jean-Yves, who will introduce us unmet medical need in oncology. So Jean-Yves, the floor is yours, if I may say.
Thank you very much, Patrick, and thank you very much for the organizers for inviting me for this session, which is exciting. If I can have the next slide. So these are my disclosures as an investigator and also as a director of the hospital. Next slide. So what remains to be done? That was the first of the 3 questions I was asked. I think the first topic is going to be prevention. The second one is a lot of progresses can be done on local treatment, and I would like to spend a few minutes on that. Understanding complexity and resistance, we are not there yet. We need to work more on that. Finally, developing novel targets and how to combine these targets is going to be challenging. And what I would call tertiary prevention, how to achieve the best for cured patients to avoid subsequent disease, subsequent cancers in particular. These are the topics which remain to be done. Next slide. Giving you some example on local treatment, how could we improve? Very, very simple. Oh, I don't see the slides. I don't know if you see them. Okay. Very, very simple. Networks showing the exhaustive number of patients with a given cancer type in this country have told us some very important news. Next slide. And these news are, next slide, please. And these news are actually that there is no better improvement of outcome that can be expected from any treatment than to treat the patient in a reference center. Are we there yet? Not at all. In many countries, patients can be treated wherever they want, while improving survival is very significant if you treat patients only in reference centers. That's all change in the organization, and that's probably the major progresses that we have to obtain. Next slide. Next slide shows you the magnitude of the problem also around diagnosis. These, you cannot read the different tumor types that we have here, but in color codes, you have the phase 2, the randomized phase 2, and the phase 3 in the light blue, dark blue, and green. And we can see on this group of rare cancers, but that's also true for all cancers because of the fragmentation provided by the advent of molecular characterization, is that a lot of clinical trials have not been done for molecular entity. That's a lot of work ahead of us, and that's certainly a work that needs to be done. Next slide. We need also to understand better the mode of action or lack of action of the agents. And I think that the expertise which has been ongoing in the recent decade on how to best predict response to immunotherapy is a very good example of that. We have biomarkers, we have a series of biomarkers, but we need to progress better on that. And in particular, next slide, if you want to apply them to each individual molecular or immunological subtype of any cancers, the amount of work which is needed, taking here only one example of, again, a group of rare cancers, is something which is definitely extremely challenging. So we need to do more original, more disruptive, simpler and faster clinical trials. Next slide. This is this is probably the future, actually. This direction of precision medicine trial are going to be basket studies. Next slide. And finally, to try to combine the treatment is going to be challenging, probably having in mind that we are facing the complexities of combination treatment to best treat patients affected with tumors which are bearing a limited number of alterations, but also, next slide, but also that even if you think you understand quite well the tumor, sometimes the combination of the treatment can be tolerated, but the results obtained in this cancer patient is not so good. So again, understanding the biology here is crucial. Next slide. All right, and finally, preventing is one thing that we have not done. Preventing is something challenging. We have seen that patients with first cancer cured have a high risk of presenting a second cancer in the year to come. And a recent observation, which has been obtained looking at the electronic health record of tens of thousands of patients in a single center, next slide, tell you some interesting observation that patients pre-treated with cytotoxic treatment and immunotherapy, particularly with immunotherapy, has a lower risk of developing secondary cancer. And this is also something that we have not done, how to prevent the appearance of the subsequent disease when you have cured a patient for a first disease. Next slide. What are we expecting in this context? That was the second question. Expectations are simple. We need to have the research or research work facilitated. We need to have our routine care facilitated. We probably need to, because we are not enough to treat patients, we need to use new tools, in particular artificial intelligence, to facilitate diagnosis, prediction of response, and prediction of survival. And we need, in general, less intensive local treatment and new targets. Next slide. Only to look at the situation in the country where we are today, in France, in breast carcinoma, showing that there is an important gap between the approval of the agents at the EMA level and the approval and reimbursement of the drug in several cancer types, including here in breast cancer, shown here as an example, extracted from a recent presentation by Professor Fizazi from Gustave Roussy. We need to be faster in approving and making the drug available. That's routine treatment. That's the best for our patient. Next slide. We also need to use artificial intelligence to best classify the patient. We have a challenge around the human resources in many European countries for diagnostic, for care of the patient. Doctors and nurses are not enough, and tools of artificial intelligence can facilitate their work, accelerate their work, and this is going to be very much expected, as this example is shown on mesothelioma to facilitate diagnosis. Next slide. We need also to develop new treatment based on molecular alteration, showing that the fragmentation of cancer types around molecular biology and immunology leads to a fragmentation of disease types with probably new types of trials which need to be done. Next slide. And these type of trials, again, are those trials called basket studies, which may be positive on one arm, negative on the other one, and we need, next slide, to have one arm specifically approved, in particular when you are going into basket trial, which includes as large as 24 cohorts. So new modes of evaluating cancer response to different treatment in different cancer types are needed in order to ensure all patients to have an optimal access to the innovation. Next slide. And that's probably also related to the understanding of the biology of the tumor, where the understanding of the mechanism of resistance can lead to subsequent efficient development of new treatment, targeting all resistance mutation. That's also one thing that we definitely need in on the medical profession. Next slide. An example of how things are dramatically moving is the example of NTRK fusion across cancer types, which are seen in all cancer types. And when we look at the response, next slide, when we look at the response which is being observed to targeted treatment in these different cancer types, we observe that actually responses are almost universal. Tumor control is observed in the vast majority of patients, but we are here dealing with such a small proportion of patients that randomized clinical trials are never going to be possible, simply because there are probably 10 to 20 patients per year in a country like France. So that's something where clinical trials, classical clinical trials comparing to the historical control, to the control arm are not feasible. And historical control are also challenging because we do not have the historical control period. These tumors were identified because we had the treatment, and historical control, we are simply not having the information on the previous and past tumor base or clinical databases. Next slide. So we need some flexibility here, as we need some flexibility around the development of new treatment. I'm very much convinced, next slide, I'm very much convinced that the future is going to be the connection between basic research laboratories identifying new pathways and their capacity to quickly interact with academic researchers, translational researchers, in order to translate the discoveries, here in this case, how to target dependent receptors and their ligands, to the care of the patient. Next slide. And we see this type of things in projects such as EORTCEric, which are available actually in France. This example following, next slide, this example, which is following the basic research discovery in one of the laboratory in the Cancer Research Center in Lyon, has led to a first-in-class, first-in-human phase 1 study, which yielded responses to a single agent of a new class. Next slide. With shrinkage of different tumor types, in this case, gynecological cancers. Next slide. And this shrinkage led to the approval of a larger project, which is really a private-public partnership in the form of EORTCEric, which hopefully will lead to a proof of concept study in a randomized phase 2 study. Next slide. All right, last question, only one slide. Latest news from Europe. So we have an ambitious program in Europe for how to beat cancer at a global level across the European Union, where the mission Cancer Europe, which provided recommendations mainly based on prevention. That's very challenging, but also extremely important, as a number of new cancers is growing in all our countries. We also have the European Beating Cancer Plan, and we have also an historical perspective of the building of European reference network in the recent past. The message around that, the latest news from Europe are quite positive, in that we have new tools now probably to beat and defeat cancer, but we need to first use the knowledge which was acquired from the previous experience around Europe, and without any doubt working together, but also being able to interact collectively is going to be the big challenge in this ambitious Beating Cancer Plan. Next slide, which is my conclusive slide. Our disruptive technology is transforming the oncology landscape to fulfill patient unmet needs. We need to work on prevention. We need to work on more efficient, less toxic curative treatment. We need to better monitor molecular and immune landscape of cancer routinely before, during the treatment. We need big data. We need registries and artificial intelligence to best predict, in order to win some additional time to be more efficient for the care of our patients and for the development of new agents. We should be aiming for cure, which is is now not anymore a dream, but very much a reality for many cancer treatments, having in mind that, again, we are speaking of a more and more fragmented world. What I think is the biggest danger is are both the administrative barrier, which are sometimes slowing us down, but also the lack of manpower that we observe in some specific areas, including oncology and organ specialist oncology, nurses, researchers. This is something that we need to focus on in the future. This is, in a nutshell, what I wanted to present to you as challenges for disruptive technologies. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you so much, Jean-Yves. I think we are right on time. So thank you for sharing with us a lot of information. I think we understood the message very well globally. I mean, we are gearing towards precision medicine. There is no discussion, and every day that comes, there is something new. This is being discovered and shared. This is translating into a very sophisticated medicine for all of us. And we heard as well at the end, you mentioned the shortage in manpower. I was there on the previous session, and they were exactly mentioning the same type of thing, even though with different type of disease. So that's going to be a problem. But this is paving the way to a lot of opportunities from a technological point of view. The more we know, the more it's complicated to understand how to take it to the next step, certainly. So before we get into the debate, I will share my three co-workers' inputs, maybe starting with Anne-Laure Morel presentation. So Anne-Laure, if you could share with us your own vision on this.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Anne-Laure Morel. I'm the CEO founder of Torskal. In Torskal, we develop gold nanoparticles by green chemistry for the treatment of cancer. Next slide. Thank you. Okay. Okay, nanoparticles are small objects of a few billions of matter that can be easily internalized into the cell. Gold is biocompatible and weakly cytotoxic material. When they are functionalized by glucose, they can be accumulated rapidly into the cell and thus allow, through their high concentration, the absorption of laser energy. We irradiate these gold nanoparticles by near-infrared laser. And this leads to thermal destruction of the tumor cells, very specifically. Okay. Sorry. Irradiation tests on different cell lines demonstrate that there is a significant decrease in cell viability just at 9 minutes of irradiation. This phenomenon is dependent on the irradiation time and the irradiation power. Significant results are obtained from 0.6 watt per square centimeter just during 7 minutes. And that is to say that we obtain 87% of apoptosis versus 29% just with the laser alone. The in vivo results on the marine model carrying skin tumor confirm these results. At the highest concentration, the anti-tumor efficacy rate reached 87%. As a result, there is a significant anti-tumor activity by the combination of the nanoparticles, gold nanoparticles, and the laser. The survival rate was significantly higher at 0.6 watt per square centimeter. So these images show good results on the skin tumor with a scab that appears after the third day. We have started our work on melanoma, aggressive tumor. But this physical technique is adapted to all types of tumor if the laser beam passes through the skin for about half a centimeter. This nanoparticles is a medical device class 3 with a physical action, as I said, on the skin that is called the photothermal therapy. And it came as a solution for injection to target nodular carcinoma basal cell, skin cancer, in 2 steps. Thank you.
So thank you, Anne-Laure, for sharing the work done with your company. I think that this one I see fits very well with the less intensive, the more precise, less toxic local treatment, which was one of the options that Jean-Yves was mentioning. But we are going to come back to that afterwards during the debate. Next, I would invite Eric Halioua from PDC Line, possibly to share with us his own input into this session.
Thank you, with pleasure. So I'm going to present you the activity of PDC Line Pharma, company active in cancer vaccine. I'm the CEO of the company. Let's start by the genesis of the technology. In fact, we are working on, based on a specific cell line that has been identified by the scientific founder of the company when he was in a research lab associated to the French Blood Bank, Établissement Français du Sang, that he had access to different pathological bloods. And he was the first one to identify PDC leukemia, plasmacytoid dendritic leukemia. You know, in the dendritic cells in the blood, you have a myeloid dendritic, which are the main parts of the cells, and the tiny fractions, which are the plasmacytoidic part, which is extremely interesting from a biological point of view. So based on these cells, leukemia cells, once again, he developed a master cell bank, what you can see here, which has been approved by the French authorities, and we have developed working cell banks based on this master cell bank with the cells frozen in liquid nitrogens, and what we are using today as a vaccinal platform just by sticking to the HLA present on the membrane of the cells, peptide representative of the tumor antigens. Okay, so that is the concept of the company. So since the foundation in 2014, the company has grown. We are now a team of more than 25 people based in France, in Grenoble and Belgium, in Liège. In terms of funding, we get close to 35 million euros. We are closing a new round of financing that we should announce the second part of October. And our PDC line, the cell line, the vaccine has three key advantages. First of it, it's an immortalized cells, so it can grow very easily. We will see from the back of the cell line, we can produce billion and billion of cells. The origin of the cells, as I said earlier, being a plasmacytoid, provide very interesting potency in terms of activating antigen-presenting T cell, expanding antigen-presenting T cells. Last but not least, it's a versatile platform. Today, we could treat any kind of liquid or solid tumor according to the peptide we stick to the cells. But we have selected one first candidate. It's a non-small cell lung cancer. And we are in phase 1/2 in this setting. And the first clinical trial, academic trial, has been completed as well in melanoma. So the manufacturing process, just short, it's one of the strengths of the company. It's extremely scalable. We are always taking the blood of one unique patient, you know, so the batch-to-batch consistency in our case is a bit ideal. We are using from the bag of the working cell bank seeding single-use bioreactor. We have 1 liter, 10 milliliters bioreactor. We can go up to 50 liters. The cells grow in suspension in a synthetic medium without any carb serum. We don't need to maturate the cells. It's already mature. And after 10 days of culture, we just have to harvest the cells from the bioreactor and separate the cells according to the peptide we want to load. We load the peptide individually and irradiate to stop the proliferations. So this process is extremely simple. It's done in the French Blood Bank today. We are working still very close with them. They have a GMP facility. And when the cells have been irradiated, we put in a specific technology. The technology of aseptic technologies is vial that are resistant to cryopreservations. And like for the COVID vaccine, we just have to ship the cells in minus 80 degrees fridge. And when the patient is ready, you thaw the cells with a syringe, you take the cells and infuse to the patients. So the manufacturing process is quite simple, scalable, and the batch-to-batch consistency is extremely interesting. So just to summarize the key competitive advantage, so I didn't show, because I don't have time, scientific data, but if you're interested, I will be very pleased to show you. So we have superior efficacy in terms of potency, in terms of multivalent. We can, in fact, load a lot of different peptides. We are not, we don't have any bottleneck related to the access to the cells, because it's immortalized and can produce a lot of them. The scalability is very important. Today, the cells is restricted HLA-A2, but we have modified genetically the cell line to enhance the target population, to add additional HLA and to target Asian population, for example. And it's very versatile, as I said earlier. We can treat any kind of cancer type, use any kind of tumor antigen type as well. We have used mRNA, electroporation of RNA, retrovirus, and as I said, HLA expansion. Just to finalize my presentation, just key financial and operational achievements of the company. I would just to put 3 of them. We signed the first licensing deal. It was a preclinical stage in Asia with LG Chem, which is the big, LG is known for the flat screen, but it's the 10th chemical company in the world, and it's growing in life science. And we provided a license for the PDC lung, the lung cancer vaccine. You see the size of the deal. We have signed as well, we have closed a 20 million B round of financing led by the Korean investment partner, which is the biggest 3.8 billion investment they have in Asia, but they have invested in the company. And we are doing a B2 round, as I said, that will be announced in October. And we get the authorization to launch the phase 1/2 with the product in lung cancer in Belgium, France, Netherlands, and Germany. And we hope very soon with Poland. That's to finalize my presentations. And I would like to thank you for your attention. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Eric. I think, well, as I see it, and I know this field a little bit, this is the holy grail. I would call it like this in cancer. I think that we can go down that route, and hopefully there will be a continuation into searching for this type of therapies. Certainly that will bring a big help to the cancer community overall. To finish the presentations of our partner, I will invite Pierre Leurent to tell us about their solution for cancer patients from Voluntis. Pierre.
Thank you, Patrick. Good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here today at Healthcare Tech Innovation Days, and I'm glad that digital health also is now a prominent theme around the promising technologies that can help support better care in multiple areas. So today I have the pleasure to talk more about our activities in the field of oncology care management. And to start with, I will just share a few thoughts regarding some existing challenges that patients face still with their therapies on an ongoing basis. And we have seen excellent treatments coming to market over the past years. It's a very steady flow of innovation that we see in cancer care, and I'm very excited also by the promising new treatments that are being developed every day, and we have had some great examples here today. Unfortunately, these treatments create, some problems in the way patients experience them on a daily basis. And I'm talking specifically, for example, about side effects that patients face in many cases along the way of their treatment. In one study, there was a notion that 90% of patients were experiencing symptoms that were impacting their quality of life. We see also, limited connectivity between the patients and the care teams. So we saw that in earlier discussions today, the fact that there is also a shortage, in manpower, and patients, in many cases, are alone with their issues at home. And I'm saying at home because in an increasing number of cases, oncology treatments are now being delivered at home, not only in the hospital. So that leads to also inviting us to do more, to care about what's happening there, and also to continuously monitor patients, and also to engage into remote management activities from the center to the patients. We also see some treatments that are delivered with some administration challenges linked to the mode of administration of the drugs, leading to dosing and adherence issues. So beyond issues with quality of life impairment, we see also complex therapies to manage and suboptimal outcomes result from that. So gaps in adherence, gaps in duration of treatment, and also escalation of symptoms towards higher grades or escalation towards hospitalizations and ER visits. That, if we had done more earlier in the treatment journey, could have potentially been prevented. So as an illustration, there were a few studies that were done in the US to talk about the extent of ER visits that could be potentially prevented if we had done a more proactive intervention towards patients. And out of a total care cost in oncology of $170 billion, it was estimated that $25 billion could annually be saved if we had done more to prevent these visits to the hospital. So a significant also economical impact for payers in multiple countries around the world. So our goal at Voluntis is to improve patients' experience and outcomes with their treatments. And what we're doing is help develop digitally augmented therapies. Our goal is to provide what we call a digital therapeutic, which is essentially a software as a medical device solution for patients and healthcare professionals alongside certain treatments. So what we're doing here is providing a tool that patients can use on their smartphone that will guide them through their treatment journey and also help them stay connected with their healthcare team remotely. So we'll see how we do that in a minute. Our goal through this digital augmentation of the treatment is to help improve patients' quality of life. It's to also help with adherence improvement, optimizing the therapy, helping patients stay on therapy, helping patients stay with the right dosage on the drug, also helping patients be more satisfied with their treatment, and also having a better connectivity on monitoring by the healthcare team. So at the heart of what we're doing, we're trying to deliver a very personalized intervention to patients on a daily basis. And along the way, we're also collecting very valuable patient data, which can inform us on the way patients respond to their treatments in real time. So more specifically, if we look at our solution in oncology, we want to help patients better self-manage their symptoms using evidence-based algorithms to improve quality of life, treatment exposure, and ultimately increasing patient survival. So what we're providing in the hands of patients is a solution that they can use to report symptoms when they occur. Automatically, the clinical algorithms that we have digitized are providing a recommendation to patients to tell them what they should be doing when these symptoms occur. So these recommendations are based on clinical evidence. They are based on the actual recommendations in the different countries, as well as some work that we've been doing also with scientific experts to try to go to the further extent in the personalization of the guidance. So it's an active system that can be used on a daily basis by patients. It is regulated as a medical device because we provide also this treatment support. And therefore, it needs to be authorized in the US by the FDA, but also as a CE mark device in Europe. It is also prescription-based, meaning that it is introduced by care teams to their patients and increasingly aligned with value-based care models because a number of treatments are now going to be paid by payers based on their actual performance in the real world. And to be able to enable these new forms of payments linked to the actual value, then you'll need a lot of data, especially data on patients' response. So our platform, called Therasse in oncology, takes this form of a dashboard for care teams, which is also now increasingly integrated with electronic medical records so that the physicians and the nurses that manage patients have seamless access to our solution through their new tool of choice. Patients can use it on their smartphones, and they can also, in some cases, connect to some wearables. Now, increasingly, we also see some medical devices that can help collect data, such as blood pressure monitors, and we see activity trackers, for example, in oncology, can provide useful insights about how patients follow their treatment journey. So what we have at the heart of our solution is really this intelligence that is embedded through our algorithms engine, which is covering a wide range of treatments. And we have done a specific work to look at managing a lot of commonly found symptoms across therapies. And we were the first company to take this solution to clearance, both in the US and in Europe. And we have been successful in securing the FDA authorization and the CE marking for this platform. Some examples of some research work that we've been doing. That's the first pilot study that we did in the US in partnership with the National Cancer Institute and AstraZeneca. It's the first time we have been working also on introducing this kind of technologies to support patients using treatments under clinical development in ovarian cancer. And we have shown very encouraging results in terms of patient satisfaction, patient adherence, and also the fact that patients in their vast majority stayed at the lower grades in terms of severity of symptoms, meaning that we were able to avoid escalation towards like grade 3 or grade 4 side effects. So that was super encouraging. And here we had already advanced technology coupled with wearables, for example, on introduced to patients. So that was published in the Journal of Clinical Oncology. A few words about our commercialization model. As a company, our goal is to establish long-standing global partnerships with life sciences companies to help us also introduce these solutions to patients at scale around the world. So we have chosen to partner with leading biopharmaceutical companies. So we've been fortunate and very busy over the past 2 years. We've concluded 3 flagship collaborations in oncology with BMS, with Novartis, and on Eisai. These collaborations mostly cover US and Europe for all of them. But now we are also starting to work in Asia, thanks to this partnership with Eisai, which is leading us to work with Japan now. So our goal is really to align and provide our platform as a solution that this partner can use to customize it a bit to their treatments and to make sure that we can engage into a co-development activity to create a unique experience for patients using their specific drugs. And obviously, what we're also leveraging here is the great access that these companies have to clinicians and patients around the world. So that leads us also to enable many patients around the world to be able to access these solutions. And finally, I wanted to share also an update on the company, because we are at an important moment in our company evolution, as we welcome a new group as a majority shareholder recently, and we are aligning forces with the Aptar Pharma Group. Aptar is a company that is a world leader in selling technology to pharma, and specifically they are a world leader in drug delivery devices. So think of them as a company that creates everything around the molecule, like packaging and drug delivery systems, like injectors and so on. And they see from their vantage point the fact that treatments are becoming more and more connected. So for example, the injection systems of patients are now going to be able to send injection data to the cloud. We are going to be able to have more and more personalized follow-up of patients when they use their drugs. And what they were looking for is also additional capabilities to do more in terms of software, in terms of intelligence that would be provided into the hands of patients and healthcare professionals. And that's why they decided to take a major role in our capital. And we see that as a tremendous opportunity also to help scale our company further, to help accelerate our expansion in terms of number of therapies supported. So we want to help large pharmaceutical companies, but also smaller biotech and pharma groups. We also want to see how we can support pharma to develop what we call integrated solutions. In some cases, you've seen that we develop software, but some software can also work as an extension to a drug delivery system. So think of it, for example, in the future, you won't notice, but the drug will include device technologies plus digital technologies all in the one single package. So we're seeing an evolution also in the offer from pharma. Pharma is going to embed digital components as part of its core offering in the future. And with Aptar, we'll have an opportunity to develop an end-to-end solution for pharma using this kind of solutions. And finally, Aptar is present all around the world. So even though we have ourselves a presence in the US, in Boston, and in Europe, they are going to be able to help us access Asian markets, Latin America countries as well, and that will be, of excellent value for us to fulfill our goal to help support patients in many therapies and also in many countries around the world. Thank you very much for your attention, and I'll be glad to answer any questions around our activities.
So, yeah. Round of applause for all of them, actually, for all of them. Yeah. So thank you, Pierre, for this also very interesting presentation, which is taking us into the e-health dimension, which actually we can't avoid any single talk talking about health today. Need to have that dimension. What I really enjoy in your approach is that it's very much patient-centric. We see a lot to do with artificial intelligence, with help to the decision-making process. I mean, this is one of the first I see where it's a bottom-up approach. It's the patient telling, how would I want my treatment to move forward? Can you hear how I tolerate it and how it can influence the way I continue? It's very interesting. So before getting into the debate with my colleagues, I would like to hear the input from Jean-Yves. Possibly now you have listened to these three presentations, and you as a treating physician, medical oncologist, what's your view on this? And on the basis of all the points you mentioned in terms of unmet medical need, listening to this type of contribution, and is it part of your environment as well to have talks on this type of contributions outside big pharmas? Yeah.
Yes, definitely. Actually, this covers at least three of the topics I was mentioning. The first one is a simpler, less toxic local treatment for presentation number one, of course, in particular for these tumors, which are sometimes difficult to treat in difficult sites. Second one is a versatile approach for immunotherapy. I think that in the fragmented world of nosology that we are facing in oncology, one of the challenges is to have something which is a bit more one-size-fits-all. So, okay, it's HLA-A2 only, but you can add some more HLA and you can bring whichever protein, mutated protein or antigen that you want to express. So that's very much addressing one of the key questions that we have. We also will need to be more simple, I think, for the future. And the last one, of course, is how to best connect the patient to the electronic health record and to the physician. That's crucial, first for the quality of care, for the best treatment of the patient, that's mandatory. There is other issue, I think, which is of key importance in this perspective, is how to best use this information. Again, I want to stress that in the midterm, the problem is going to be human resources. So we need to have people on the other side of the computer having a look at the information and trying to implement them to the best care of the patient. And using that type of information is going to be very, very useful. So that's a daily discussion, all three.
So, well, this is very enjoyable. So now I'm interested to hear what they are going to tell. And you've seen here, Jean-Yves is a very convinced person immediately, whatever the solution you bring. Now I'd like to know, on your journey, convincing physicians or healthcare providers or investors, what's the most difficult part for you when you talk to these people and you want to convince them to work with you, actually? On your solution. And maybe we can start with you, Eric.
Yeah. Thank you. No, it's an important question you're asking, how to convince and the different players. So first of it, when you have a therapy to treat patients, what is extremely important is to show convincing scientific data that it could work, that you have preclinical or first clinical data that show that the efficacy of your product or your vaccine or whatever has a good chance of success. We know the chance of success is not 100% from the beginning, but the objective would be to show that we have a bit higher percentage of success because we did all the good science and we have the good team as well. It's extremely important. The human resources point is key, definitely. A company is a mix of technology and people. Of course, you have the IP and other dimensions, but technology and people are the two key elements. And for doctors, it's exactly the same things. We have our clinical trial in Léon-Bérard, I should say, currently, and over centers, as well in France and Belgium, and as I said, Netherlands, etc. So you need to show that you are robust enough, good data and good people, and good teams to manage the clinical trials. That's what I can say. And for the investor, you need to have as well convincing team and how may I say, to know how to get the right lead investor at the right time and to be in a good positions when you to have a repeat fundraising. So it's really a job as well. That's what I can say.
Okay, I understand that. Anne-Laure, for you, it's even more specific because you are so specific. So I'm interested to understand. There might be a slight difference when you come with something which is so specific from what you do.
As I said, we synthesize gold nanoparticles by green chemistry. It's a disruptive process, and it's also a disruptive way of treatment of cancer. For our first program is the skin cancer. So the difficulty is to convince investor that the use of medicinal plants will change the way to treat cancer from an environmental point of view and a scientific technique point of view. And we started from zero. We were not backed to a laboratory, academic laboratory. So that is it. That is another difficulty. So this is the 3 points for me. Yes.
Okay. So, and have you been able to, when you talk to physicians, maybe these are dermatologists or medical oncologists, specialized, or surgeon actually even, was this something that was immediately appealing to them, or you also have to play a bit of convincing with them?
For the physicians and the scientific, it's not a problem. It's more difficult for the investors because they don't understand why we have to use green chemistry today to formulate the new medicine, the new medical device to treat cancer. Yes.
And I'm sorry, I'm coming back to you, and just because you're just talking about green chemistry, and is this something that patients are? Have you been able to talk to any patients or organization or because green chemistry can sound very attractive for patients, maybe even more than for physicians?
Yes, the particularity of our technology is that we use medicinal plants from Indian Ocean. We substituted all the chemical compounds, synthetic chemical compounds, by plant extracts. And in Réunion Island, for example, where we use this plant, it is used generally by traditional practitioners in order to treat some skin problem, not cancer. So they are they want to valorize the biodiversity. So they want to be part of this project globally, and we also demonstrated that the green chemistry is less toxic than the conventional synthesis, and that is important from a scientific point of view. Yes.
Thank you, Anne-Laure. So to you, Pierre, now, you are, I see, a little bit more advanced than your two colleagues into the business model, at least. So who is it complicated to convince nowadays for you and for your partners?
Well, what we want to do is really to scale, this kind of partnerships. So, I mean, our key area of interest at the moment is, looking at in which therapies, these solutions can bring the most benefit. The good news is that a number of, treatments today would be relevant for this approach of a digital companion, if you will. So what we want to do is really to, engage with more, partners from the industry to be able also to make this approach better known. So then, at the end of the day, when it comes to introducing these solutions into the hands of clinicians and patients, then it will be a joint effort, with our life sciences partners. So there is only a number of things we can do. We are still a small company, but our partners are present all around the world. So we want them to do most of the, of the work to really, talk about these solutions and introduce them, in multiple countries. So talking about clinicians, clinical teams, I think they are interested in clinical, organizational, and economical aspects. Clinical, does it bring value? I mean, is it demonstrated? Does it make sense? Is it safe also to use? And so on and so on. So a number of things have to be there to demonstrate first about the value, because quite frankly, in digital health today, there is a lot of noise in the market, because we talked in the previous roundtable about so many solutions out there. But if you look at digital therapeutics, you're talking already about a very small segment of the digital health space with clinically evident solutions that are also authorized by regulators as medical products themselves. So we need to really explain also what we're doing, which is very different from a number of tools out there. Secondly, organizational, I think it was mentioned at different times, and I couldn't agree more. All the time, when you talk about clinicians, teams, I think it's not only about technology, really. I mean, the technology has to work. It has to be integrated with the electronic medical record. That's granted, because otherwise people are not going to use it. However, it's a question of how the care team is reorganized also between the physician, but not only the physician, the nurses. Nurses are going to take a very, in a very important role in managing patients remotely more and more under the delegation of the physician. So how do the oncology care centers, adjust their organizations to this new way of managing an increasing number of patients with the context of a shortage of human resources, and also how to be more productive, how to focus our work on the most compelling cases, but also delegating to the machine the most repetitive aspects that could be handled electronically. And finally, economical, because a number of these new activities, such as remote managing patients, need to be paid differently by payers, because in many cases, care is still paid for by the visit. We need to make this evolve. So different countries, especially in Europe and the US, are taking steps to reimburse care differently. For example, in the US, the oncology care model has been a first example of paying for the value of treatments. And now the next evolution of this payment model will include paying on helping care teams also get paid when they use these kind of technologies to support patient care. So it shows that now we are reaching a level of maturity in the industry with enough clinical evidence to tell, okay, PRO management is important. Additional incremental active support for patients has value. In some cases, some studies have shown that it can go as far as increasing survival for patients. So now we are getting to a point where it's ready to enter mainstream. But it requires a lot of cross-stakeholder alignment, I think, to make it happen.
Right. So one more question, and the same as I was asking Anne-Laure, is what was the weight of the patient into your development or decision? I mean, or patient organization. I understand they are at the end certainly benefiting from this hugely. But how much were they actually contributing? And
it's very simple. Since day one, I can tell you the first partner of the company in our journey has been a patient association.
Okay.
Very simple. So it shows a lot in the fact that it started, with patients and for patients. That said, we need to look at that very specifically on a daily basis, and it still is very much our guide for all our activities. But the entire ecosystem is much more complex.
Yes.
When you want to distribute these kind of solutions at scale.
So I would tell probably in all situations similar to yours, a patient and patient group organization may be one of your best ally actually to help and help you also making the community aware of your undertaking, because you shouldn't be alone. It's complicated. I mean, we will have no time, but vis-a-vis competition, there is a huge competition in oncology overall. There is a competition to get reimbursement, to get payment at the end as well, not only to find the technology to go through. So how do you see that? Is this a problem you don't want to see, or is it a problem because, or is it not a problem because you will want to hand over your technology earlier on into the proof of concept? Not for you, because we understand you are going your way, but for the two of you, have you a business goal like we go up to end of phase 1 and then we hand over?
Okay, we are for the first product in non-small cell lung cancer. What do you think? You think we could commercialize a product alone? It would be very difficult, you know, from my point of view. It depends of the size of the market, the marketing scales you need to get, the scale up of a lot of things, regulatory, and the risk you're taking to switch completely from a development company to a commercialized company is quite high. It's not impossible. I know a lot of companies, at least in US, that succeed to do that, but it were more on orphan disease and small, you know, niche market. So in our case, definitely a partner will be important. So maybe these patient associations could be handled by them. What I would say for the patient associations, my experience, I was in other company in the past in orphan disease. They are extremely present in orphan disease in Europe. But in US, we have more structured patient association, and I find it was easier to find, and they can even invest in companies. They are creating funds, but it's more and more important, and you need to work with patients. It's not easy when you are a biotech or pharma company because you have a lot of constraints. But the patient association become a key stakeholders you have to integrate in your strategy. Definitely.
Thank you. So Anne-Laure, I'm sorry, I think that we are coming to the end of the session, so we have little time. I really would like to thank you all, including Jean-Yves in Lyon. Thanks for staying with us to the end for your contribution. I think that there are many topics we could cover the whole afternoon. I mean, I was thinking, and I wrote, what about the French situation versus the European situation versus the worldwide or US situation, and how do you think about this type of topics? Because this is probably very important. But I mean, it would take us the whole afternoon. I mean, certainly we agree that whatever solutions you are trying to bring or bringing to the market is worth for patients, is worth for physicians. I cannot tell you yet how it's going to be worth for payers or contributors or investors, but I hope that we could share today your passion for what you are doing, and we confirm certainly there is an interest from the scientific community for you to pursue this, and certainly also for the patient dimension in your appraisal of the e-technology. So we have exactly 10 minutes, 10 seconds left for any question. So it should be a very rapid question with a very rapid answer. No, I think that they are all very convinced about what you shared today with us. Thanks again. Have an excellent afternoon for the continuation. Bye-bye.
Bon, ça s'est très bien passé.
Oui, c'est bien passé. We break for 5 minutes.